Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week for an incredible episode is Dr. Sonjia Kenya. She is a doctor, she's a professor, she's a sexologist, she's an author, and she's a podcaster. This woman knows sex. She's not afraid to give you the information. She is amazing. You guys are going to love this episode. We're talking about creating and slipping into your sexual alter ego, a character that's you, but it's a different version of you, maybe with a different name that you could slip into in order to give you the freedom to do all of the raunchy, fun, dirty, awesome things that you want to do anyway, and how much fun that can be and how to do that. We also talk about how scheduling sex, right? Taking the reins and scheduling sex is one of the horniest things you can do, and it'll lead to better sex, more often, right? We also talk about how you can have incredible sex by surprising your partner with a few things. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Sonjia Kenya.
This week's conversation.
Dr. Sonjia Kenya, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I jumped at the chance when you were introduced to me via email, right? I'm like, this is going to be awesome. The audience is going to go wild. So, of course, I would love to have you. And someone of your caliber, too, because you're doing so many things, I think, in sex and dating, really, too, because it's kind of rough out there. And we talk about this a lot on the show. And I feel like you're going to be able to provide. There's been a lot of doctors on the podcast these last couple of weeks. And I think you guys are bringing this other element that's like, hey, this shit does work if you use it, by the way. And I think that's a very important sort of sharp contrast, because there's people consume, right? And then they're like, that's cool. And then they don't do anything. But I think with you, and especially with your Instagram content, right, that I've seen, it's very like, hey, check this out. But you almost get the feeling that it's very pragmatic in the sense that if you use this shit, it will work. And so I love that about you, and I want to explore that. But before we do, right, I need to shut up, and I need to do this right off the rip. For the people who don't know you, they've never heard your voice, they've never seen your face, they've never read your book. Could you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. I am Sonjia Kenya, and I am the only Ivy League trained sexologist and professor of medicine in the United States. I really try to just help people have better sex over the lifespan. And I think that begins in childhood when people are learning about sex. And it extends until people die. People live through heart disease, prostate cancer, breast cancer, diabetes. And through all of those changes, there aren't a lot of health experts out there talking about how do you maintain a fulfilling sex life and sexual intimacy as you're going through these very normal changes. For example, perimenopause, menopause, that most of the world is going to go through some sort of physical or physiological change throughout their lifespan. So unfortunately, many Americans enter their sex life from a point, I would say, like they're a person with disabilities, because not only have we not learned about sex and how to engage in sexual intimacy in a way that's going to bring satisfaction, but we don't know how to maintain good sex through our lifespan. Because nobody's talking about it. And it's a completely legit part of our health. When someone had great sex last night, they walk into the office, they have their little glow, right? And everyone's like, someone got laid last night. That is a physiological response. That's real health benefits showing themselves, manifesting. And when someone's not so nice and cuts you off in the grocery store or the lane or the copy machine if you're in an office, you're like, needs to get laid. And we all know someone from both ends, you know?
Yeah, and we're encountering these people daily, and sometimes we are these people, and we even realize, like, fuck, I need to get laid, right? And I need to relieve the tension, yeah.
My whole thing during the last presidential whatever thing was like, come on, Melania, do your job. Do something, save us. My God, what are you doing? I mean, if that's getting laid without having to pay for it, then the country would have been in a lot better situation.
Oh man, yeah, that would be so funny if he just like came out was like super smiley and happy and nice to everybody. Like,
but it's clear we can look at that relationship. She is not doing him at all.
and they both look so like stone faced miserable too. So like no one's getting laid in that relationship.
Nobody, right?
Yeah, that's why it's so funny and so true. And again, like that's what I feel about your content, because you kind of come at somebody and, you know, and sometimes you'll have like a sheet or a whiteboard behind you, you're pointing to it or whatever. And it's kind of like, hey, don't you see that? Da, 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 da. And so you just did it now in a real world example that our last president wasn't getting laid enough. Yeah, maybe that's why he just like randomly would call press conferences and like go to North Korea, do these like really dangerous, crazy things, right?
I mean, just many things. And we've seen it. We see it every day. We can all think about a person who we've worked with who was not having sex and not having orgasms on a regular basis. And it was reflected in their day-to-day attitude.
Yeah. And then as soon as they get some, they're like, their work becomes better. They're like, they might wear their hair different, right? I was just like this whole kind of, and if someone's getting it regularly, I mean, shit, right? It's like a whole different vibe. It's a whole different person that's coming into the office.
Absolutely. Someone who you actually enjoy being around and can work with.
Yeah. Maybe we should, you know, if you have a boss or something, again, this is just my unsolicited advice. If you do this, don't sue me. Don't come back. Don't do this. But here's some advice. If you have a boss or something that's terrible to you, like just hire a sex worker to approach them and have sex with them, right? Like just go for that. See, maybe then you'll get the paid overtime and the paid time off. I mean, come on, you know?
It's almost like, and through people like you who are bringing great sexual health information to the masses. It's like, we all know we have to eat our vegetables, right? We know people who eat vegetables and drink their water and exercise generally have better health outcomes than those that don't. It is the exact same with sexual satisfaction and fulfillment. And I think that, you know, my call in this lifetime is to make sure that people feel more comfortable addressing their sexual health than they do ignoring it. You know, right now, people are more comfortable talking about when the last time they had a number 2 bowel movement rather than their sexual health. They might say, hey, I've been constipated for 3 days, but they won't say that they haven't had, you know, sex in 3 years, which is so much more common than people think.
Yeah, that's so weird. You know, and you know, what's crazy is it's like the basic, you know, fact that our bodies do these things and provide pleasure, you know, and it's a part of our actual biological system as a human being in this body. It's like having fingers, right? Imagine having fingers and developing some sort of, you know, cause or mythology around don't use your fingers. That's for bad people or something, right? Like don't use your feet instead or something. That to me, that's what it is. It's like we're telling people don't embrace sex. It's the devil's juice or whatever, right? And so do you do you think that it's religion, it's society, it's the government, it's looked down upon? Because I mean, you're very, very smart, you know, PhD, I listed, you know, author, right? All of the things. Why do you, I mean, at its core, what's the fucking problem here?
We have a lot of problems. One of them is religion. And what I love, and I do give talks in churches. I've been asked numerous times to give talks in churches.
Oh, wow.
And the first question I ask people is, what's the purpose of an orgasm? What's the purpose? There's actually, women do not need to have an orgasm to procreate, right? God, whatever God you believe in, whatever higher power you believe in, wanted sex to be pleasurable. Otherwise, when I could shake your hand and get pregnant, but that's not how we were made. Orgasms were made so women have pleasure during their sexual experience. That is the only purpose. There's no other biological function. There's no for an orgasm. And that proves to the religious bodies, you know, not all of them believe in science, you know, but that, it to me is evidence that our higher power wanted us to really enjoy sex. But unfortunately, religious bodies have been way too successful controlling our sex lives in this lifetime. I don't know if you know the history of marriage and sex, but sex was not always part of marriage. Marriage is because my family wants something that your family has, so we're going to join forces together. My family's going to get some more land. Maybe your family becomes business partners with my family, and it's a mutually beneficial financial security situation. Priests got involved, and they were like, you know what? Marriage is not legal. We're not going to recognize marriage unless it's consummated. So what used to go on is we could get married because we both have a podcast. We want to do great sexual podcasts. So let's get married and build this business and take over the sex podcasts of the world. But I'm going to have my boyfriend on the side because I love him and I love having sex with him. And that's what I'm doing. So priests needed to shut that down. And they were actually not even priests. They were monks, celibate monks. So these are people who have not had a lot of experience in relationships. And if they're celibate, they should have not had any sex. And they decided, you know what, that marriage is not legit unless you consummate it. And once they did that, it made all sex outside of marriage a sin. And they're still doing it. It's crazy to me that these people who have not had sexual relationship experience have been so successful in governing our sex lives. And, it's of no service to anyone. One of the best examples that comes to mind is like Britney Spears. Look at how sane she is not. I can remember when she was coming up, she was like, she's a virgin, right? She's never going to have sex. And what all the scientific studies have shown is that people who are not prepared to have sex, that abstinence only mentality, means that when they're much more likely to suffer unwanted sexual consequences because they're not prepared to engage in sexual intimacy. God is not going to come into your bedroom and say, now's the right time. I bless this sexual experience. So we all need to get over that. I do think religion has been extraordinarily successful in trying to demonize sex. But we know as scientists, there's just too many benefits. All of the hormones that you release in your brain, the chemicals that your body produces are just good. Is nothing but good. And people have good sex, healthier, wealthier, and happier. And who doesn't want all that good stuff?
Yeah. Well, for real. And science and religion clash all the time. And here we go. Right. So, and I love that they do because you need to have somebody clashing with that nonsense. And listen, if you're religious or spiritual, I'm not telling you you probably already shut this thing off by now, but if you're still here, you're welcome here. Stay here. You can watch, you can listen without, we won't tell anybody. So just hang out and learn some stuff. Right. But I love that there's a voice like yours that's pushing back on that. Right. And I do have 2 follow-up questions. One, when the monks are like, hey, lady, you can't have a boyfriend. Was it just something that because they were celibate, they were like jealous of the sex? Or do you think it was something like, we can't have another guy in the mix, he's going to ruin this fucking business deal? Like, what do you think was the actual reason?
I think it was control, power. It was just pure power because when people used to get married, the church was the people who married people. So they were the condoning body. They were the ones that so even if you weren't religious, you had to be married through the church, the government. There was no courthouse for people to go down to. Okay. And so as society has progressed and we've had the separation of religion and state because we have laws. You know why we don't all look at the 10 commandments every day? Because now we have laws. And so we didn't have laws. So we needed the 10 commandments. We needed some sort of order in society. But we have progressed from that point. So I think it was to hold on to their power, to I'm in charge, even though we're getting to a place where laws are being made and policies are being made. We're still in charge of this marriage thing. And, but to your point, it probably did have something to do why should everybody else have the fun if we don't? Yeah. And back to that, if we all know, and I went to Catholic school for 18 years. The only reason why priests can't get married, if we all know, is so that when they die, the church stays, it belongs to the church. Because if you're married, the church would then go to your spouse, right? Whoever, the church, the property, the deed, the more.
Wow.
So in order for them to maintain control of the physical church, they can't get married. So everyone's like, oh, because you have to be married to God. Well, we don't have enough love to go around. Like, really, I can't be married to God and still love a spouse or children. Like, there's nothing I've ever encountered scientifically that have showed me that there's some sort of limited amount of love.
Right.
You can only have love this much. So, we can you might have 10 siblings. I might have 3. Right. And you might love all your siblings just as much as I love mine. There's a limit on how much you can love. So it's an interesting thing when people really go through history and realize how sex has been something that the church has been trying to control basically since the beginning of time. We can start looking with a more open mind at these things. And that's why I open a lot of talks in churches. Like, what's the purpose of an orgasm? Why did God make orgasms?
Yeah.
And you're like, so a woman could have pleasure?
Right.
A man needs to have an orgasm in order to procreate, but a woman doesn't. So, I think, but it's been a very, very rewarding experience for me, because at the medical school, I'm a professor at the University of Miami School of Medicine. And there are very few people in academic medicine who are like me, but I've felt highly valued throughout my career, because one thing that almost every physician that I've ever worked with, and I published a paper recently, what are doctors learning about sex, based on what the medical school curriculum is. But all physicians basically feel unprepared to talk about sex with their patients. So it's been great to have someone like me on the faculty who can not only educate future physicians, but I also work with a lot of current physicians. If you're going to recommend that your patient goes through a breast cancer surgery or a prostate cancer surgery and might be on a medication for the next 10 or 15 years, or maybe their entire life, that is going to have an impact on their sexual functioning, I think they absolutely should know about that when they're in the decision-making process. You don't want someone to go through a procedure and then figure out after, maybe I would have waited and watched to see if something developed before I did all of that. We just want to make sure that all of our patients, I want to make sure that everybody can make the most informed decisions that they can. And that especially in this crazy world where so many religious men and silly women are trying to prevent women from having authority over their own bodies. And by that, I'm saying women cannot get an abortion in many places in the United States right now, regardless of how they became pregnant or why they might want or need an abortion. It's really, really important for us to understand that a lot of this comes from control. And if every woman got pregnant when she wanted to, and only because she wanted to, if rape never led to pregnancy, if all of these things, if a woman never died because of a risky pregnancy, but these decisions are still being made without science. And so it's been fantastic to be able to work in an academic medicine environment where I have been not only I felt so valued, but like I won an award 2 years ago as a health champion for Florida. And I got a $50,000 check with that award, which is great.
Nice. Yeah.
But it's starting, I think, slowly it's really important for the medical community to start legitimizing sexual health as an integral part of our overall wellness.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any state in the union that would need someone like you more than Florida. I think that you are right where you need to be. You're in Miami, right? You're in South Beach, so like, great. You've got that. Obviously, more of a sexual liberal in terms of like people are, on the beach, fucking no clothes, like whatever. But like sex is a component of South Beach. It's a component of Miami. It was built on that. It's a horny place. Look at the colors. Look at the lights, right? Look at the flowers. That was a nod to Walking Dead. But like, I feel like to have you in Miami, right? Awesome. It's like the capital of like sexual freedom in Florida. But outside of that, it's pretty fucking nuts in the things that they're trying to do. They're burning books. Their fucking condoms are probably going to go out of the way soon. So like, it's a scary thing. So I'm really, there's not a better place for you to be. And I hope you use that 50,000 on something cool. Right. So what do you think? Well, number one, do you think, have you had people enroll in the courses and the classes you teach, just be like, oh, this is like a fun, sexy, horny class. And then they come out of it like, wow, I learned so much and I'm activated to go and fight these battles now. Cause I feel like you would have the class that like everyone would want to take in that field, because it's like, it's a little, like clubby and fun and like whatever, or at least they think that, right? But have you had people like enroll and like, oh, this is the fun class, and then they come out and they're like mind blown and they're like, I'm gonna go fight for reproductive or plan B or like whatever. If you could dive into that and tell some of those stories, I think that's fucking awesome.
Absolutely. Now I do. Full transparency.
Sure.
I teach very little now because I'm highly funded by the National Institutes of Health and different other, which is the largest healthcare funding agent or health research funding agency in the United States, and different foundations. So I run the largest street-based sexual wellness clinic. And I do have a pathway, a cohort of students who's with me for 4 years, but they're very, very select students. But what your question brought me back to when I first started in academia, I used to teach the sex class at an undergraduate campus in New York City. I went to Columbia University in New York, and I used to teach classes in undergrad, and my classes were so heavily attended. Half the class were like volunteer students. They weren't even enrolled in the class. They just came every week. And then I'm like, you guys know today's a test. They'd want to take the tests and everything. And, because it's not really, it's important that we learn about sexual functioning and preventing sexually transmitted infections and the reproductive system. But it's equally important to learn about sexual pleasure and how a woman's anatomy works so that it can experience sexual pleasure, because there's not a lot of places to learn that. And same with men's bodies and people who don't identify as either, non-binary people. Regardless of how you identify, the taint is usually, the perineum, that space between your vagina or your penis or your front opening and your back opening is generally a sweet spot for many people. So it's important that people know that you can stimulate this in different ways and produce pleasure, and that's non-penetrative. So you're not going to get pregnant from that. And you're not going to get an STD, or it's a lower risk for an STD. Let's put it that way. So I think it's really, so the interest comes from people are really hungry. How do I please a woman or a man? And also, how do I, recognizing differences? Your last girlfriend, her body works a little bit different than your current girlfriend. So just because that worked on her doesn't mean it's going to work on your current girlfriend. And I think it's really important that if you're brave enough to bring these topics up to your doctor, that they're smart enough to be able to help you, that they've gained enough knowledge and information to give you some information about how to improve sexual pleasure in your experiences, because it's very, very common for people to be in a relationship for over a decade and not be experiencing sexual pleasure, even though they're engaging in penetrative sex. And that's terrible. I'm like, why are you going to go to the airport and miss the airplane? That's so silly. What a waste of time. And so we want to make sure, I think it's really, really important that the more people there are like me, and we're still very limited, but the more that we can all experience healthier, happier relationships. And that may mean that you really, really, really love someone and you want to be with them, but you don't want to have sex with them. And that's okay. And I think as people, what we're realizing now in relationships is that you can actually, sex in many cases is the least important part of a long-term successful partnership. It might have started as the most important thing that brought people together, but a lot of people don't want to break up just because they don't enjoy having sex with someone anymore. So what do we do about that? You know?
Well, doctor, what do we do about it? Because I'm going to fire the question right back at you, because that's a big one, right? And I think, just my basic boy fucking podcast brain is saying there's a polyamory side to this. There's a open relationship side to this. So I'm going to put the question right back to you. If you are in a relationship or a situation where you do love someone, but the sex isn't there, or maybe it is, but you want to add to it, what do you do? Because everything that we've just said up until this point, we talked about the religion, we talked about Britney Spears. I don't know why I threw that in there, but whatever. We've talked about, some of these forces that want to keep you down. And we've also talked about people, who are making these horrific decisions because they haven't gotten laid. So all that being said, what do we do to bust this framework that we think we need to stay inside away and find pleasure in its various forms?
Great question. I think it's important to remember marriage or monogamy, relationships, everything is a choice, right? You should not feel like you're in a jail cell, right? And I think that somehow most of society feels like, oh, I'm just in this miserable situation that I must stay in. No, you don't. So I feel you can fix this. It's your life. But I think the first thing that I ask people is, if you want to stay in your monogamous relationship, most people have never learned how to discuss sex with their partner. They haven't learned how to discuss sex with themselves or come to terms with their own sexual desires or try to become more self-aware about what could turn them on. Mm-hmm. And so I used to do therapy. The last time I've done therapy was 3 days before I gave birth. My son is 11, so it was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I prescribed, which was so successful, is I'd send people to a sex store to go shopping together and get a feather, give them a shopping list and get these things. And then you might give them an exercise like sensate focus exercises, which is 4 weeks where it's an intimacy building exercise. The first, no mutual touching. The first week, you can touch your partner for 15 minutes and everywhere except for their breasts and their vagina or their penis. And I touch you for 15 minutes, then you touch me for 15 minutes. And the job is you're trying to listen. Does this feel good to your partner? Do they want it harder? Do they want it softer? What's the temperature? But there can be no sex. And then the second week, you can do that same exercise, but now we can incorporate touching the breasts and the vagina or the penis or the anus. And the third week, now we can engage into some mutual touching, but no penetration. And you know what that does? That cures erectile dysfunction with no medication. And so people think that they can't get turned on by their partner, but they haven't actually spent time doing the homework. So I have found it's been very effective to give people homework exercises, especially if they don't want to open up their relationship. Sometimes I think opening up a relationship is kind of the laziest way to go. Yeah, it's like, of course a new person turns you on. You don't know them. They don't know you. Mm-hmm. That it's easy when you don't know, desire and transparency are hard. It's hard for them to cohabitate together. If I know every single thing about you, then it's hard. Where's the mystery? Right. If I know exactly where you are, what you're wearing, the last time you pooped, what you like for dinner, what your favorite hobby is, what your best talent is, what's turning me on right now. And so adding some mystery. Role playing is another thing that doesn't cost, it doesn't cost a lot of money other than the costumes that you may buy. There's no medication involved. And all of a sudden you're having sex with my alter ego, and people can feel really weird about that. And I'm like, Beyonce has to become someone else before she goes on stage. She becomes Sasha Fierce. Beyonce is not the one performing. She actually has to go into her character and role play, so and going into character, sometimes a woman may not feel relaxed, or she may not feel pretty, or she may have something going on. But, if you now take on this character where you're acting like Mitzi, who's from South Carolina, who drinks martinis and wears a silky robe and speaks with a Southern twang, that can do a lot for both of you. So I think when people are bored, essentially it is, and it's easy to get bored in relationships. It happens to almost every relationship where there's not effort. So if you're bored in relationship, there's a lot of non-medication exercises and activities that you can do. Similar to working out in the gym, the hardest thing is walking through that door and talking to someone who's going to give you these exercises to do. And sometimes, you can get, just by him putting the toilet seat down, she's turned on. He did the dishes and she's wet all of a sudden. She hasn't wanted to have sex with him in, 5 years. And all of a sudden she's wet because he did the dishes and vacuumed the house and got a babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important and to learn how our brains work, men's brains work, women's brains work differently, to learn about our hormone levels, how our hormones work. Sometimes it's going to be very easy for a man to get his woman in the mood to have sex, and sometimes he's going to have to put more effort into it. So it's good for him to learn her menstrual cycle. And what I have found is just talking about sex, just the conversation we're having right now. I do this in person and everybody in the audience is turned on. Every single person I'm looking at, they're like, I need a cigarette. I need to go. And I'm like, well, because all we're doing is talking about it, but they're engaging in these networks in their brain that haven't been activated in so long. And I think that people are generally become really lazy. And I think society wants us to be lazy. They want us to be stressed out. Stress is the biggest killer of everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they want us to be stressed out and unable to enjoy things, which is why people go on vacation. We go on vacation to have sex. That's what I said. That's the one reason why the number one people go and they say they want to relax. They're either everyone is hoping to get laid when they go on vacation. Everybody is hoping to get laid by either their partner or by someone new. But you don't go on vacation thinking, I want to be here all alone and not have
read a book.
Yeah, and read a book. Yeah. So that was a really long answer. I can't even remember what your question was.
It doesn't matter. This is Sex Party. We're just gonna fucking roll on with it. And I do want to say that the whole time you're talking is some of the best knowledge that's ever been dropped on this show, and we're in the 120s right now, so like it's been going for 2 years. There's so much I want to dive in on. I love the vacation piece, but the alter ego thing has fascinated me forever. I actually read a book about 2 years ago. I can't remember the name of it. If I come up with it, I'll fucking talk about it or put it in the notes or whatever. But it was a book about how highly functioning people in business, in sports, in sex would come up. They would purposefully develop an alter ego. I think it was like Bo Jackson or something, right? He would become Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies. And when you go back and look at the tapes of Bo Jackson, that motherfucker is like cranking people just like Jason, right? He's a big dude, but he's like, no. When I put, and they always tell you to like have a ring you put on that then makes you, or a hat or something, whatever. And I love that idea of bringing that alter ego thing to sex. That is so fucking cool, because you're right. Beyonce does become Sasha Fierce. And all these other people become different versions of themselves. I mean, maybe they haven't named it yet, but I encourage people to find your alter ego, to name it, to develop a fucking backstory and just have fun with it. So I love that you said that. I want to push in on maybe how much freedom that they get, because they might be like, this is silly, I don't know, or whatever the fuck, but I don't trust this guy or whatever. But I just think that that's really important, and that could provide people with a safety net to really have some fun. So how would you suggest that they develop an alter ego to have some fucking just raunchy, obnoxious, amazing sex?
I think when we think about what really turns on, like for me, I love getting a massage. I always wish like my massage, I always pray, I want a super hot, strong guy. That's what it's like, please make him super hot and strong, because I'm going to be so relaxed. And when I think about someone touching me, you're sitting there on a massage table and someone has basically, they could do anything to you. Right. And that came out in my own relationship, and I very naturally and very early in my marriage, I can remember my husband, I was like, he picked up on that. And it was like, ooh, my Jamaican massage therapist. He's like, ooh, don't tell your husband, where I'm at, where this is going to happen in the massage. Don't worry, we're going to be done before the hour is over. But that required nobody getting a costume, right? And nobody, so it was a very natural thing. Like, that's what turns me on. And now he knows if I go get a massage, she's going to be very relaxed. She's going to be in the mood, and I can extend that. And that's like an easy, quick fix. But I also think like we all have different sides of us. All of us are onions with so many layers. I teach a class called Yoga for Better Sex, right? So one of my alter egos is, her name is Karma. She's all organic and she's vegan, and she has her green juice, and she doesn't want to wear any fast fashion. Her thing, she's into, very much into preserving the universe, and those are elements of me as well. But Karma cannot show up into my business meeting at the medical school where every division is headed by a tall man,
Yeah.
But that allows me to lend myself more into my yoga persona, which I am a yoga instructor, just not all the time. And I think finding out what turns your partner on, like who is I've met many couples who have their celebrity crush, right? So who's their celebrity crush? And rather, I think it's pretty unhealthy when partners get jealous of their partner's celebrity crush. It's like, it's very, very unrealistic. There's many lovely people in the world. It's very unrealistic that you're the only person that is ever going to be right for your partner for the rest of eternity. It's great if you guys keep choosing that. But the reality is there's a lot of wonderful people in the world, and, there's probably someone else that your partner might find joy with someday if you were not available. But hone in on that. If she likes, I'm thinking Justin Timberlake, because we talked about Britney Spears now. But if she has a crush on Justin Timberlake, then you come out in your, Justin Timberlake thing. Like, hey, baby, I saw you at the concert, and
hell yeah. Hell yeah.
You want to come backstage, and another super easy role play is we were all so attracted to our partners when we first got together. And I love asking couples this question, like, when did you know you wanted to sleep with them? And they tell me when they knew they want, and everyone smiles when it just brings back such great memories, such good feelings. And so I say, go meet at the bar, go to the bar that you guys met and pretend like you guys don't know each other. Go pick up on her at the bar. She's got to order the same drink you ordered 10 years ago. And you got to order the same. And even if it's not the same bar, it doesn't really matter. But act like you don't know her. Hey, Sarah, what's going on? Or whatever your name is. I can remember my husband and I have done that. And I'm like, oh, what happened with you and your wife? That you guys, why did you split up? He's like, she was just too perfect. She was actually just too good for me. But
wow.
You pretend like you don't know each other or that you're having an affair with each other. And even if you don't do that, go to the bar and let her or him do their own thing and pretend like they don't know you. Get a little jealous, see them trying to flirt with someone else, and go over and break up that flirtation. It's very different meeting somewhere rather than going together, sitting together, ordering the thing that you've always had. That you've developed this routine over the last decade or so. And I think that, as you said, a lot of smart people and accomplished people, they get into this alter ego. But most people that I've met who are sexually satisfied understand the importance of scheduling. If you don't schedule, and it doesn't have to be a dinner date, it's a lunch date. I tell parents all the time, play hooky. When your kid is in school, you have a built-in babysitter. Nobody, because it is harder to have sex with a kid in the room than a parent. Your parent, you can get by your parents, but you cannot get by a kid.
No.
But, and be a little bad while your kid is in school and you don't have to worry about those things. And, pretend like, oh, I don't want to get pregnant. I don't want kids. I like my single life. Don't be the PTA president like you might be.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and that was actually one of the pieces of content that I watched this morning with my girlfriend, and we both because her and I, I'm running a podcast and another business, and she's running relationship coaching and another business and whatever. And we're really creative people, and we're in love and we have amazing sex, but it's like, we want to have more sex. And we're like, well, where the fuck is this going to fit? So when you had that, it was a reel, and it looked to be doing pretty goddamn well. And you had ideas in there about scheduling sex. This was something I was going to bring up anyway. So you are a podcaster's fucking dream. You just bleed these things out perfectly. There's no transition. So thank you for that. And you run a podcast, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Can you talk a little bit more about how scheduling sex is it's not the anti-horny, right? Everyone's like, that's so fucking drab and whatever, because you say in that reel, we're all very, very busy. And it sucks, because sometimes it's like, are we going to eat or are we going to fuck? You know what I mean? And so it's not a very easy decision to make, because the nourishment can fuel the sex. But sometimes it's like, fuck the chicken breast and broccoli. We got to get it on or whatever. So can you talk about the busyness, how scheduling is hot? You tapped on it a little bit, but I want to get more in there with you.
I think going on a lunch date with a partner is so great, because there's not a lot of interruptions other than you already know you've put work off for a second, but it allows you just some time, how are you? What's going on? Or, and schedule, and it allows you to connect intimately, let's try even a new restaurant. So science has proven over and over again, when couples are exposed to something new where they have to learn together, they get excited together. So that's why, again, vacation is important, or having new experiences is important. And schedule. And when we talk about scheduling, the first thing I want to say, it doesn't have to be both partners scheduling. One partner can be scheduling the sex, right? Because they're like, but I know she's really busy. You said about all the things that your girlfriend is doing right now, right? Mm-hmm. So you could send her dinner at work and be like, you're not going to have time. We're not going to, I have something planned tonight. We're not going to have time to eat, when you get home. And then she comes home to a clean house, because the way women's brains works, we can't have competing responsibilities if we're going to experience her ultimate potential. She comes home to a clean house. You have something on the living room, maybe a blanket or something. You I want to learn how to give you the best massage you've ever given. And then you can your plan is to get her so excited that she can't turn it off. And maybe you're just you're not going there. You're doing everything but putting your fingers inside of her. You're doing everything but putting, your tongue on her ass or whatever. You're doing all of this to where she just can't. And it's also an unexpected surprise. It's something that you have taken the time out to plan, and she didn't have to make the decision. Do I have to eat the chicken and broccoli or have sex? Because you sent her dinner or whatever at work, or it was, somehow you had already built that in. And I think another thing, in the reel you're talking about, I think one of the things I talk about is I believe in having a piggy bank by the bed. Put a piggy bank by the bed. If I go to bed and I see some money by that piggy bank, and I'm not a $20 hoe, right? But $20, I'm like, I could do something with $20. That's like half a tennis lesson, right? I could do something, but it's really the worth. It's like, am I willing? And I'm like, oh, and that's a game. This, all $20 buys you is this. I'm just going to breathe on your penis. I'm actually not going to suck it. I'm just going to breathe around it and put some more money. But it's the teasing. It's the, hey, I booked a hotel for us tonight. And I think one of the biggest issues is women do not want to have sex with their long-term partners. That is by far the biggest sexual problem in America today. Women don't want to have sex with their partners. No woman over 30 wants to have sex with their partner. That's an overgeneralization, but most.
Sure.
Most of them feel like Melania feels about Trump. They're like looking at him like, dude, no, ew. But a lot of that has been like, what has he done? Like, what have you done for me lately? Really? And so do something to earn it. And so, and if both couples are planning it, it's great. But isn't it always exciting when someone is just thinking about you and you didn't even know they were thinking about you?
Yeah,
Like,
it's the fucking best.
Right. Like you come home from work and you don't even know that she has like a quarter of an Altoid in her mouth, and you come home from work and she just gets on her knees, drops your pants, and it's different than any sort of fellatio she has ever performed on you before. You're like, what is this? Is this tingling? Is this burning? What's going on? And then you're like, wow, this is cool. And I mean, an Altoid you might have to buy, but you don't have to buy crushed ice.
Right.
You can, and I always remind people to crush it because a big old ice cube in your mouth is not really feasible for a lot of pleasure.
Sure. Yeah.
But and do a little hot cold play that you weren't even expecting. And you might give a massage with some hot cold play, or you might just get right to it. Hey, I didn't know. Does nipple stimulation turn you on? We've actually never discussed this. So I just wanted to try this, and putting a little, have a little ice in your mouth. See what happens. Not everybody's turned on by nipple stimulation. Are you? So I think so the important things that I want people to remember is it's great when both people can plan together and they have it on their little calendar, but that too can become routine for some people. And it's awesome when one person has a plan and they absolutely are considerate of the other person's schedule. You don't want to plan it right before the biggest board meeting they've ever had in their life. Right?
Yeah.
You get all these investors in your podcast and you have to get there, by 8 a.m. and at 7 a.m. she whips out a surprise because you're distracted. It's really important that the other person is considerate of what you have going on. And so I think planning can be fantastic. And I also want people to remember that it can be so natural and feel natural. And I'm going to do my little plug. When I was pregnant, I actually created this body oil, Sense Aromatherapy body oil. I didn't know it was ever going to be sold. I created it because I didn't want to get bit by mosquitoes. So I didn't want my baby to get Zika. I didn't want to get Zika and blah, blah, blah. And I live in Miami. And then when I learned that some of the essential oils that repel mosquitoes, those are also some of the exact same essential oils I prescribe to people because science has shown that they stimulate sexual desire. If you ever wonder why we're in a society right now where no one's even allowed to eat a carb, and yet Cinnabon has not gone out of business because that smell is one of the smells that has been proven over and over again to turn people on. And when you look at that line in Cinnabon, you basically see a line of obese men who want to get laid and they're going to Cinnabon instead. So it's really, those types of things what I did was I combined the most potent essential oils that stimulate desire. I put them in a body oil. I didn't know if it would work. And it turned out it does. It's very effective at repelling mosquitoes. What I didn't expect is everyone wanted to hug me. My dentist, my colleagues. I mean, people started buying. I was like, the only reason I sell it now is because all of my colleagues who I work with, you have to sell this magic potion. I was like, it wasn't supposed to be that. Now it's like, it's like dad juice. When the dads bring it out, the moms know he wants sex, but they're going to get a massage out of it. So she's going to get relaxed. The smell is going to turn both of them on. And it's like, that's not really role playing. That's not so much scheduling, but it's at least someone took the effort to buy a massage oil that has been scientifically shown to stimulate desire. And that and then they use it. And I always say it's really important to know about these things, to become educated. And maybe you could find something like that in a sex store too. But so just putting that effort and doing the homework. And I always say, the reason why I made sense is because being eaten should feel good.
Yeah, well, fuck, of course. And of course it would take off if you put all this knowledge and all your awesome, wonderful, things that that no one else knows into something you would create. I want to jump really quickly to your podcast and your book, right? Because I think we're getting towards the end, and I want to leave them knowing that you have this awesome book and this fucking awesome podcast. So can you talk about both of those?
Absolutely. So I wrote this book. I used to write a sex column for the newspaper here. So I had my little Sex in the City. I was like, then I couldn't write the sex column anymore. My biggest challenge in life is I'm so busy academically. I have so many projects, and I just expanded to the Virgin Islands. So now I'm in between two very different territories. So I was writing the sex column, and I wanted people to continue to talk about sex in short, easy, fun ways. And so I turned my sex column into a book, and it did become a bestseller. They actually did a TV show on it years ago. I mean, it came out over a decade ago. It was incredible the way that it took off, and people wanted it to continue. So I do a podcast, and the podcast, it's short. It's not long like yours. They're short, like it's 15-minute episodes, give or take. Mm-hmm. And the point of that is to inspire someone to have a discussion about sex that they would never have anywhere else. So I want you to listen to that podcast on the way home, when you're driving home, when you're sitting in traffic. And if you like it, share it with your partner, because it will inspire a discussion that you've never had before. And the more people are communicating about sex mm-hmm. in a transparent way or in a fun way, we all enjoy when we're having fun. So it's funny, it's light, it's sometimes silly, but it doesn't neglect the scientific things that we know about how to have great sex. So the goal is to make it very relatable. So if you pick up the book, it's a book that you should have in your bathroom. You'll read a couple of pages. You'll get an idea about something you want to talk with your partner, or you leave the page folded on your nightstand, and your partner reads that, saying you'll finish each thing. It might be 2 pages mm-hmm. and you'll get an idea about something that you want to try, whether it's role playing, whether it's, I think it starts at what causes an O, and it's like, there's a 1-prong approach, a 2-prong approach, or a 3-prong approach. And now you're talking about with your partner, have we done a 3-prong approach ever? Have we done a 2-prong approach? Or you might talk about, role playing, and it's something that you may have thought about it, but you didn't think about you did not have the self-efficacy to bring it up to your partner. Or you might talk about, non-monogamy. There's so much consensual non-monogamy now, and you may be something that you're thinking of. And I encourage, look, you want to be able to talk to your partner about everything. The last thing you want to do is come home and find your partner in bed with someone else because there was no communication. So you didn't even know that they liked that. And that's what that other person is able to do for them, because they did not feel comfortable bringing it to your attention. And so everything that I do is to inspire that. I have an event called Date Night Special in South Beach where we take 5 couples out every month. And it starts at the World Erotic Art Museum. And it's a cultural tour of the largest collection of fine erotic art in the United States. And then I put them through evidence-based exercises that stimulate desire and help them strengthen their sensual connection. And the reviews, it's an Airbnb experience. People think I paid people to write those reviews. They wrote those reviews. Some people will write a page. Like, I've heard people, I was married for 16 years. I did not know what intimacy is. And one of the exercises I give them is with a feather. I'm like, dude, buy a feather. Like, you're trying to do all this. We're all like, it's bam, 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 bam. But I remind people, the orgasm is the culmination of desire. Mm-hmm. How do we extend desire? That thing that we had before we ever had sex. That's the magic key. How can we extend that? When's the last time you rubbed the inside of your partner's elbow? Sure. Or right where their butt connects to their back of their thigh. Maybe that's their thing. I give people diagrams, and every podcast is about something short like this. A diagram of a naked body, and you give your partner markers and say, mark all the places that I like to be touched, and then all the places that I don't like to be touched. And then you get to correct them, because most of the time they're wrong because they don't know. That's it. And what other way can you do it? And if you're I think there's a million couches you can go to complain about your partner. But what sort of playful experiences can you have that are actually going to evolve your sensual connection? And regardless of whether you're in a monogamous or a non-monogamous relationship, I think that's what we're all looking for in our romantic relationships. How can we evolve this connection? How can we get everything that we want? And if we're not getting it, how do we try?
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, this is your Bonnie and Clyde moment. It's us against the world. We got this.
I fucking love that. Dr. Sonjia Kenya, thank you so much for being on Sex Party. I know you have to jump, but before you do, I really want you to tell them where they can find you on social, right? Where they can find your book, where they can find your podcast, all of the important things. That way they're running over there as soon as this is over.
I'll give you my steal for your daily dose of nookie knowledge. Check me out on all the social media platforms. I think TikTok is probably, if you really want like a video a day, there is a video a day uploaded to TikTok about something important, and they're short, they're informational, they're quick, and that's DRSONJIA, Dr. Sonjia, or SEGS Doctor, SEGGS, SEGS Doctor, or Dr. Sonjia. That's on TikTok, Dr. Sonjia, DRSONJIA. On Instagram, LinkedIn, all of that. The podcast, Sex in South Beach, you can get anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And it's been fantastic being here with you. You can always check out my website, drsonjia.com, DRSONJIA.com. And I think what you're doing is so important, because the more people who become educated and comfortable discussing sex, either with their friends or even with their family members, because we have a lot of people out there whose family members need to be educated about sex, and someone's got to take the reins and do this. I think that, we'll have a healthier, happier world. I can't see a lot of people having regular orgasms and starting wars. They don't live together, those two things.
Oh God, I love that. You're so fucking cool. And also too, like, I want to have you back. So I have something I'll pitch to you as soon as we stop recording here for a second. But I just want to thank you for being on the show and like packing such a fucking punch, into an hour. So thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and thank you for all the compliments, and I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Big thank you to my guest, Dr. Sonjia Kenya. That was a fucking awesome episode. Make sure you go follow her on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Go buy her book. Go subscribe to her podcast. Listen to all the episodes. They're short. They're valuable. She's amazing. She will be back. If you guys are loving guests like Dr. Sonjia Kenya, you want to see her again, because she will be back, of course, right? We love to bring the good people back. If you just love Sex Party, you want to show some devotion, some appreciation, you want more Sex Party, you never want to miss an episode, what can you do? Well, if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you could leave a review, you could leave a rating. Those things are nice and wonderful. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. But what you really want to do is you want to make sure you're subscribed to the show so you never miss a brand new episode of Sex Party every single Wednesday, especially if you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts. They're doing this thing. They may or may not have unsubscribed you. Go to Sex Party with Dustin Rybka on Apple Podcasts. Upper right-hand corner, there's a button. Make sure there's a check mark there. If there's a pause button there, they have paused your subscription. Hit it until you see a check mark. If you're watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. If you're watching on YouTube, have you ever tried the Varsity Blues whipped cream trick in a sexual encounter? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, what can you do? Well, you could leave a comment. You could like this video, all the videos. But again, what you really want to do, subscribe to the show so you get a new episode of Sex Party every Wednesday. And I get you as an amazing subscriber. I am always available in the DMs. And as always, I will see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.